up, you guys? My name is Aubrey and this is my channel, and today I want to talk about the election. Now, the election is quickly approaching, and of course we all know that President Trump and Joe Biden are both running for the presidential election. But did you guys know that there are also a lot of bills that are being voted on throughout the country as well? One example of this is Prop 22, which is being voted on in California. And so that is what we will be discussing today. I'm going to be talking about Prop 22. I'm going to be talking about what it means. I'm going to be breaking down what you guys need to know and how this could affect you and the gig economy. So let's get started. Traditionally speaking, gig workers are independent contractors. And for those of you who don't know what a gig worker is just somebody that works for services or drives for services like Postmates, Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, Favor, Turo, all of these other things would be considered gig workers. And historically, throughout the gig economy, these gig workers are independent contractors, meaning that they aren't considered employees of that company. For example, if you drive for Uber, you do not work for Uber. You are just a driver for Uber, thus you are an independent contractor for Uber. Same thing for like me and Turo, for example. I don't work for Turo. I'm not their employee. I am simply an independent contractor that works with their platform. This is a big difference between employee and independent contractor, because a lot of the benefits that you get from being an employee, you don't get from being an independent contractor. In fact, this is something I've talked about a lot on my channel because of the fact that I have been an independent contractor for now a couple of years, and it's what I do full time. And the problem with independent contracting is that though you have the freedom to work on your own schedule, you do in a way work for yourself and you're your own boss. You can work from home, you can work when you want to and from where you want to. But the downside is that you don't get a lot of the benefits that come along with working for a traditional 9-to-5 or being an employee for a traditional company. For example, you don't get insurance benefits, you don't get overtime pay, you don't get health benefits, you don't get the minimum wage requirement. You don't get so many of the things that employees receive whenever they work for a company. For a long time, this has worked really well, and I think a lot of people would argue that this kind of process of being an independent contractor with these larger companies is still a good thing. But there is an argument to be made that over the last few years, the gig economy has absolutely exploded, and as a result, the gig workers should now be classified as employees. Especially because so many gig economy platforms, places like Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, have really kind of cut the drivers' benefits in half, and Turo is doing the exact same thing. It seems like whenever these companies first start out, the benefits and the pay are crazy good because they want to recruit people in. They want drivers to come in, they want Turo hosts to come in, they want Airbnb hosts to come in. But then once the platform starts needing to become profitable, they cut costs wherever they need to, and a part of that is with the independent contractors' earnings. So because of that, there has been a lot of debate recently on whether independent contractors that are gig workers should be reclassified as employees and thus receive the same benefits that you would get if you were working for a traditional company. That's where Prop 22 comes into play. But before we can start talking about Prop 22, we have to talk about another bill that was introduced last year called AB 5. And what AB 5 did was exactly what I just talked about. It reclassified a lot of the gig workers as employees. So it would reclassify people that drive for services like Uber or Lyft, and it would then make them a full-fledged employee rather than just an independent contractor or a gig worker. Now, the reason why this is significant, or this was significant, was a number of different things. People liked the idea of it, or some people I would say, because it provided these gig workers with a lot of the benefits that you would get with a traditional 9-to-5. Things like paid time off, things like sick leave, things like healthcare, and the financial safety net that comes along with a job. But the problem with AB 5 that I think a lot of corporations have, as well as some independent contractors, is that it would make it significantly more expensive to operate Uber and Lyft because healthcare, employees, benefits, these things are expensive. And I'm not justifying the corporation's thought process with this, but it is most certainly a scary thing for companies like Uber and Lyft to then have to go and think about providing healthcare and benefits to every single one of their drivers. And it's something that they are undoubtedly concerned about. The reason why some independent contractors don't like AB 5 is because of the fact that it would then make them an employee. And for some people, the ability to be your own kind of boss, the ability to be an independent independent contractor, the ability to have the flexibility that comes along with that is the entire reason why services like Uber and Lyft are appealing. And that if you now have to adhere to a specific schedule, if you're now an employee rather than an independent contractor, they would no longer be interested in participating at all. And I think that that point is valid as well. But before we begin breaking down Prop 22, I would like to thank the sponsor of this video, Kover. Now, Kover is a financial safety net that offers financial safety net services for gig workers and people that work for services like Uber, Lyft, Postmates, Amazon Flex, and more. Now, how Kover works is you pay a monthly fee, and the fees start at just $7 per month. And you get a lot of the benefits that you would get if you were working a traditional 9-to-5 job. Things like sick leave, things like advanced pay, and one of the best services that I think is the coolest is access to a legal team. Unjustified deactivation on apps like Uber and Lyft is a real problem, and this is something that deters a lot of people from participating in the gig economy. Imagine working for a company or driving for a company like Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, Postmates, and so many others, and then have your account deactivated unjustified, meaning that you didn't do anything wrong. It's just one day your account was there and the next it was deactivated. I know for me personally, I would be absolutely crushed if my income stream was stopped overnight. But if you are somebody who would be concerned about this type of thing, then Kover is the perfect service for you, because with Kover, you can have access to a legal team that can assist you in getting your account reinstated. I think that this is one of the coolest options and one of the most unique services out there to help gig workers. And in my opinion, I think that that alone is worth $7 a month. Having the ability to have access to a legal team is something that is invaluable in my opinion. The best part is that if you guys are interested in checking out Kover, if you're interested in giving it a try, I have a link in my description below that will give you 1 month free. So you can try it with no strings attached. You don't have to sign any long-term contracts or commitments, and it is super easy to set up. So if you guys are interested in trying out Kover and securing yourself a financial safety net if you're a gig worker, I would highly encourage you to check it out. It is an amazing service, it is super valuable, and I highly recommend it. So now that we've talked about AB 5, let's dig into Prop 22. So what Prop 22 is it basically takes away everything that was in AB 5. So AB 5 was a bill that was introduced to turn gig workers into employees. And what Prop 22 does is it basically negates everything that's in AB 5. Now, Prop 22 was actually created and funded by some of the big companies that we're talking about today. Companies like Uber and Lyft have spent a lot of money backing this bill because these companies don't want AB 5 to pass and be enacted in the state of California. The reason is exactly what I was talking about before, is that with having to pay everybody like an employee, there is a lot of costs that come along with that. There are the health insurance costs, there's the minimum wage costs, there is the sick leave costs, there is all of the kind of contractual obligations that you have as an employer whenever you have an employee. And oftentimes those same obligations don't exist in the same way if you have an independent contractor on staff. So now begs the question of, should you vote yes or should you vote no for Prop 22? So if you vote yes, you're basically saying that you do not think that these independent contractors should be classified as employees. You think that these gig workers are independent contractors, they are not employees, and thus they should not necessarily get the same benefits that a traditional employee would get. If you vote no to Prop 22, you're saying the exact opposite. You're saying that you want AB 5 to essentially stay into effect, that you want AB 5 to dictate whether or not a gig worker or a driver for services like Uber or Lyft would be considered an independent contractor or a full-fledged employee. Now, one thing to note is that if Prop 22 fails and AB 5 goes into effect, it's not like every single gig worker automatically becomes an employee and gets benefits. Like, there's still requirements that need to be met. Like, you have to work a certain number of hours in order to get these benefits. You have to have a certain amount of criteria met in order to have the things that we're talking about in this video. So it's not like if this passes, if you sign up for Uber the next day and work 1 hour a week, you'll get full health benefits. That's not how it works. It's just saying that if you meet the criteria, you will or will not be classified as an employee for that corporation. So again, voting yes is voting in favor of the corporations, that you want there to be flexibility of whether or not somebody is considered an employee working on the corporate level or an independent contractor working as a driver. Voting no to Prop 22 is the opposite, and it's basically an opposition of the corporations. You want AB 5 or the government or the bill that was established to determine who is an independent contractor and who is an employee. And you want gig workers to have the ability to be classified as an employee. Now, the pros and cons of this bill are quite broad. I definitely definitely can see both sides of the argument. And there are a lot of independent contractors who are voting yes and a lot who are voting no. And there are, of course, a lot of companies that are wanting people to vote yes to this because they want to save money on employment costs. Now, this is honestly kind of a really complicated issue that affects a lot of people. It affects a lot of companies, and it affects a lot of staff, and it affects a lot of people who not only make money through the app, but also use the app. Because the fact is that if corporations like Uber and Lyft have to increase their employment costs significantly, they may just move to another state or cease operations altogether. Now, I see both sides of the argument. I can see why Uber and Lyft, of course, want this to pass. I can see why gig workers do not want it to pass, because I can see why they would want to be considered an employee. But I can also see why gig workers would want this to pass and would not want to be considered an employee. If you're considered an employee of a corporation, you're held to different standards than you would be if you're an independent contractor. And I think for a lot of people, there are some real benefits to being an independent contractor, like the flexibility, like the ability to do what you want when you want to be able to work on the projects when you want to. For me personally, being classified as an employee and having to adhere to an employee schedule would be an absolute deal breaker for me. I wouldn't want to continue in that environment. I like being an independent contractor. I liked having the freedom to work on what I wanted to work on, to be able to help multiple clients at once, to be able to make my own schedule. Those are all real benefits to being a gig worker and to being an independent contractor. And if you take that away, it could change the entire environment as a whole. The other thing that I think is a valid point of Prop 22 is the fact that it's essentially being written and funded by corporations like Uber and Lyft. And it's definitely like slanted in favor of these huge corporations. And I don't love the precedent that that sets, is that if a company shovels enough money into a bill and spends enough money advertising that bill, then they can sway any legislation in their favor. And so I do think that for me personally, I would probably be apt to vote yes for Prop 22 because I wouldn't want to be classified as an employee. But I also don't like the precedent that that sets, and there is a part of me that would want to vote no specifically for that reason, because I don't want companies like Uber or Lyft or Facebook or Twitter or any of these other large corporations to be able to create laws and to create bills and spend a ton of money on those bills in order to benefit their own businesses. That's something that doesn't really sit right with me, but I can definitely see both sides of the argument. But at the end of the day, my opinion doesn't really mean a whole lot because I'm not in California, I'm in Texas, and this type of bill is not being voted on in Texas. But I would love to hear y'all's thoughts on whether or not you are for or against Prop 22. I definitely see both sides. I'm kind of in the middle. I don't really know exactly where I stand. But I would love to hear your thoughts, so make sure to leave a comment down below. I'd also love to hear why you feel that way. So leave a comment whether you are for or against Prop 22 and your thought process as to why you feel that way. And also make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell. And I will see you guys in the next video.